How dare he? The words escaped Sarah's lips, as if someone had punched the air from her chest. She stood frozen in her small but cozy kitchen, clutching the heavy, gold-embossed wedding invitation that had just been delivered to her by courier. Her hands were trembling so hard that the envelope nearly slipped from her fingers. Her heart pounded as she read the words again, her eyes tracing every golden curve of the letters as though they might somehow rearrange themselves and say something else. But no, it was exactly what she thought. Daniel, her ex-husband, the man who had once held her hand under the stars and sworn eternal love, was inviting her to his wedding. The room suddenly felt too small, the walls too close. Her mind swirled with memories, good ones, bad ones, the kind that sting so deep they leave a scar on the soul. She remembered the day she had met Daniel, back when she was still a college student, and he was already a rising star in the business world. He was charming, confident, the kind of man who made everyone in the room turn their head when he walked in, and somehow, against all odds, he had chosen her. Or at least that's what she thought back then. Their love had been a whirlwind, the kind of romance you see in movies. Daniel had swept her off her feet with expensive dinners, surprise flowers, late-night drives just to watch the sunrise. He told her she was his world, that together they would build an empire. And Sarah had believed him with her whole heart. But somewhere along the way, the dream had turned into a nightmare. It started small, arguments about money, about how she spent her time, about the fact that she wanted children, and he wanted to wait until the timing was perfect. But Sarah was patient, loving, devoted. She thought love could fix anything. Then came the night she found out about the other woman. Daniel had been distant for months, claiming long hours at the office, more business trips than usual. Sarah had tried to be supportive, cooking his favorite meals, staying up late just to sit with him when he finally got home. But one night, when she picked up his phone by mistake, her world came crashing down. There were messages, hundreds of them, between him and his secretary. Romantic ones, flirtatious ones, ones that left no doubt about what was going on behind Sarah's back. She confronted him that night, heart in her throat, hoping he would deny it, hoping there was some other explanation. But Daniel hadn't denied it. He had just stared at her with those cold, businesslike eyes and said, "Sarah, we're not working anymore. I think it's best if we go our separate ways." And just like that, the man who had once promised to fight the whole world for her walked out of their marriage as if it meant nothing. The divorce was brutal. Daniel's high-priced lawyers had made sure Sarah got almost nothing, just enough to survive, not enough to be comfortable. She was left with a tiny apartment, a few pieces of old furniture, and a heart so broken she thought she might never smile again. And now this invitation. The audacity of it made her blood boil. Daniel hadn't just moved on. He wanted her to watch him marry the very woman who had broken their marriage. He wanted her to sit among the guests, smile politely, and pretend to be happy for him. Sarah sank into the nearest chair, clutching the invitation to her chest. Was this some kind of twisted joke? Did Daniel think she was so weak that she would show up looking pitiful, a reminder to everyone of what a mistake she had been? The anger built in her chest like a fire. For months after the divorce, she had been too broken to fight, too exhausted to care about appearances. She had cried herself to sleep more nights than she could count, wondering what she had done wrong, why she wasn't enough. But those days were gone. Sarah had rebuilt herself, brick by brick, tear by tear. She had gotten up every morning and gone to work, even when her body ached and her heart felt like lead. She had started a small home baking business just to make ends meet, selling cookies and cakes to neighbors. At first it was just survival, but slowly word of mouth spread. People loved her desserts. She found herself getting larger orders, then catering small events, then weddings. And somewhere along the way, she had begun to thrive. She wasn't the same Sarah Daniel had left behind. Her phone buzzed on the table, snapping her back to reality. It was Mia, her best friend since high school. Sarah answered, her voice quiet. "Mia," she said, "you're not going to believe what just came in the mail." When Mia heard the news, she nearly shouted through the phone. "He did what?" "Oh, no. Sarah, you're not going to that wedding. That man doesn't deserve a second of your time." Sarah stayed silent for a moment. staring at the invitation. "Maybe I will go," she said softly. Mia was stunned. "Why?" "Sarah, he's just trying to humiliate you. You know he wants to parade you around so everyone can compare you to his shiny new bride." "Exactly," Sarah said, and for the first time in a long time, she felt a smile forming on her lips. "That's why I have to go." Because Sarah knew something Daniel didn't. He didn't know about the nights she had stayed awake with morning sickness, crying herself to sleep because she was pregnant and alone. He didn't know about the 3 beautiful babies she had brought into the world. The triplets who had become her reason to fight, her reason to grow strong. And he definitely didn't know that Sarah was no longer poor. 2 years of hard work had transformed her life. Her bakery business had taken off, allowing her to buy a beautiful home, hire staff to help her, and even splurge on a few luxuries she had once only dreamed of, including a sleek black Rolls-Royce that was parked outside right now. No, Sarah wasn't the woman Daniel remembered. And when she walked into that wedding, she would make sure everyone knew it. As Sarah carefully placed the invitation on the table, she felt a new determination settle over her. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming her power. Daniel had once taken away her dignity, but now she was going to show him and everyone else just how far she had come. For the first time since the envelope had arrived, Sarah smiled. "Oh, Daniel," she whispered to the empty kitchen, her voice calm but full of fire. "You have no idea what's coming." The night after receiving the wedding invitation, Sarah couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, staring out at the moonlit street, her heart heavy but her mind racing. The memories of her past played like an old movie in her head. The fights, the betrayal, the way Daniel had walked out as if their marriage had been just a business contract he could cancel at will. But beneath the pain, something else stirred. A spark. She remembered the day she found out she was pregnant. She had been sitting on the cold bathroom floor, clutching the little white stick in disbelief. There were 2 pink lines staring back at her. She had smiled through her tears because even though Daniel was gone, life had given her a reason to keep going. The first few months were the hardest. Sarah was alone, working long shifts at a local cafe just to afford rent. She had no one to lean on, no one to hold her hand when the nausea hit or when she cried into her pillow at night. There were days she thought she wouldn't make it. But every time she felt those tiny kicks inside her belly, she found the strength to keep going. When the babies were born, 2 girls and a boy, Sarah's life changed forever. She named them Hope, Grace, and Adam. They were small and fragile, but when she held them for the first time, she knew she had been given a second chance at life. Raising 3 newborns as a single mother was nothing short of a battle. Sarah often woke up every 2 hours at night to feed them, rocking them back to sleep with tears streaming down her face from exhaustion. Her body ached. Her bank account was nearly empty, and yet she never gave up. She worked at the cafe during the day with the babies strapped in a stroller next to her. When customers complained about the crying, Sarah would smile apologetically and keep working, her mind focused on one goal: survival. But Sarah wasn't content with just surviving. One night, after putting the babies to bed, she stood in her tiny kitchen and looked at the old oven. She had always loved baking, ever since she was a little girl helping her grandmother knead dough on Sunday mornings. She decided to bake a batch of cookies and sell them at the cafe the next day. The cookies sold out within an hour. People loved them so much that customers started asking for more. Cakes, pies, muffins. Sarah saw an opportunity. She started baking late into the night after the babies were asleep, experimenting with recipes, creating flavors that reminded people home. At first, it was just neighbors and regular cafe customers. But soon word spread. People started placing custom orders for birthdays, anniversaries, even weddings. Sarah's little kitchen became the heart of her growing business. Every dollar she earned, she saved. She refused to live in debt. She used her earnings to slowly upgrade her equipment. First a bigger oven, then a professional mixer. She even hired a teenage neighbor to help babysit the triplets while she worked. Months turned into years, and Sarah's business exploded in popularity. She rented a small shop downtown, painted it a cheerful pastel yellow, and named it Sweet Beginnings, because that's exactly what was for her and her children. People loved not just her desserts, but her story. This woman turned heartbreak into hope, customers would say. Soon, she was catering big events. Her shop was featured in the local newspaper, and she was making more money than she ever had during her marriage. But Sarah didn't just focus on work. She focused on herself. She went back to school part-time, taking business management classes to help her grow Sweet Beginnings even further. She worked out when she could, not for vanity, but to feel strong again. She started dressing up, wearing bright colors and elegant dresses instead of the old, oversized sweaters she used to hide in. Every day, she became more confident. And then came the biggest milestone, the day she walked into a luxury car dealership and bought her dream car, a sleek black Rolls-Royce. The salesman had asked, "Would you like to finance it?" Sarah had smiled and said, "No, I'll pay in full." That moment felt like victory. She drove the Rolls-Royce home and parked it in front of her beautiful new house, a spacious, sunlit home with a garden where her children could play. She had decorated every room with warmth and love, filling it with laughter and the smell of fresh-baked bread. Her children, now toddlers, were thriving. They were happy, curious, and full of life. Hope loved drawing, Grace loved singing, and Adam had a fascination with toy cars. Sarah had built a life that was better than anything she could have imagined. And yet, sometimes late at night, when the house was quiet, she thought about Daniel. Not because she missed him. No, that part her heart had healed. But because she wondered what he would think if he saw her now. Would he even recognize her? So when that gold wedding invitation arrived, Sarah saw it as fate's timing. This wasn't just about attending an event. This was about standing in front of the man who had once made her feel worthless and showing him that she had risen from the ashes, stronger, happier, and more successful than ever. Mia, her best friend, tried to talk her out of it. "You don't owe him anything, Sarah. Why even go? Just throw the invitation in the trash and forget about him." But Sarah shook her head. "No, Mia, this isn't about him anymore. This is about me, about closure, about walking in there with my head held high and proving to myself that I am not the woman he left behind." And Mia, seeing the determination in Sarah's eyes, finally smiled. "Then go, girl. Show them who you are." The days leading up to the wedding felt like preparation for a battle. Sarah went shopping for the perfect dress, elegant, sophisticated, and powerful. She chose a deep emerald green gown that hugged her figure and made her eyes shine. She booked a professional makeup artist, hired a stylist for her hair, and even found matching outfits with triplets so they could make their grand entrance together. When she was done, she stood in front of the mirror and hardly recognized herself. Gone was a heartbroken, fragile woman who had once begged Daniel to stay. In her place stood a queen, a woman who had fought through pain, built a future from nothing, and was now ready to face the past head-on. The night before the wedding, Sarah tucked her children into bed and sat quietly in her living room, sipping tea. She felt calm, even excited. Tomorrow wasn't just a wedding. It was her moment to walk in, not as a victim, but as a victor. Her moment to show everyone, including Daniel, that she was not broken. Her moment to finally put the past to rest. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and golden, as if the universe itself knew this day would be unforgettable. Sarah woke up early, her heart pounded with anticipation. But this time it wasn't from pain or dread, it was from excitement. She got out of bed and walked to the nursery. Her triplets were already awake, giggling in their cribs. Seeing them smiling, reaching out their tiny arms toward her, gave her strength. "Today," she whispered as she kissed each one on the forehead, "Mommy is going to show the world who we are." The house buzzed with activity as her stylist arrived to help her get ready. The emerald green gown she had chosen shimmered in the morning light. It fit her perfectly, hugging her curves without being too revealing, radiating elegance and quiet power. Her makeup artist worked skillfully, highlighting her cheekbones, giving her lips a soft rose color, and making her eyes look like they were glowing. When she looked in the mirror, she saw a woman who looked nothing like the Sarah of 2 years ago. This Sarah was poised, confident, and radiant. She dressed the triplets in matching white and gold outfits, each with tiny shoes and little bow ties for Adam, headbands for the girls. They looked like angels. When the Rolls-Royce pulled up outside, Sarah felt her heart race. The chauffeur stepped out, opening the door for her like she was royalty. Neighbors who saw her couldn't stop staring. They remembered the days she used to walk to the bus stop in the rain with 3 babies in tow. Now she was a vision of strength and success. "Ready?" Mia asked, her voice emotional as she helped Sarah into the car. Sarah nodded. "Let's do this." The venue was breathtaking. A massive garden estate decorated with white roses, gold ribbons, and crystal chandeliers that hung from a large open-air tent. Guests in glittering gowns and sharp suits mingled, sipping champagne and chatting. Daniel stood at the entrance, greeting guests with a confident smile. He looked polished, his custom-made tuxedo fitting him perfectly. His bride-to-be, Jessica, stood beside him, glowing in her white dress. Together, they looked like the perfect couple. But Daniel kept glancing at his watch. He was waiting for her. In his mind, Sarah would show up late, flustered, probably in the same old car she had when they were married. He imagined her stepping out in a plain dress, looking like she didn't belong among the glittering guests. And that thought brought a smirk to his face. "Everything okay?" Jessica asked, noticing his distracted expression. "Yes," Daniel said, straightening his jacket. "Just waiting for someone." The hum of a powerful engine silenced the chatter. A sleek black Rolls-Royce glided down the driveway like a panther. The crowd turned their heads, curiosity flickering in their eyes. When the car came to a stop, the chauffeur stepped out and opened the door, and then Sarah emerged. The sunlight hit her gown, making it shimmer like emerald fire. She stepped out gracefully, her heels clicking softly against the stone driveway. Her hair cascaded over her shoulders in soft waves, her face serene but confident. There was a collective gasp from the crowd. This wasn't the Sarah they remembered. The quiet, timid housewife who used to follow Daniel around at company parties. This was a woman who owned every inch of the ground she walked on. But what really stole the breath from everyone's lungs was what came next. 3 little children stepped out of the Rolls-Royce, holding Sarah's hands. The triplets looked adorable in their matching outfits, their wide eyes taking in the scene. Whispers started spreading through the guests like wildfire. "Are those Daniel's kids? She has triplets? She looks incredible. Is she rich now?" Daniel's smirk faded instantly. His jaw dropped, and for a moment, he looked like he had seen a ghost. Jessica's smile froze on her face. Her hand tightened around Daniel's arm. "Who are those children?" she asked in a low voice. Daniel didn't answer. He couldn't. Sarah walked forward with perfect composure, her head high, her children clutching her hands as they toddled beside her. Guests moved aside instinctively, creating a path for her. She didn't rush, didn't falter. Every step was deliberate, powerful. Inside, Sarah's heart was racing, but she didn't let it show. She remembered the countless nights she had cried herself to sleep, the humiliation she had felt when Daniel left. This moment was a redemption. When she reached the entrance, Daniel finally found his voice. "Sarah?" he said, his tone somewhere between disbelief and shock. She smiled politely, as if greeting an acquaintance at a business event. "Hello, Daniel." His eyes flicked to the children. They're yours." Sarah's smile widened slightly. "Ours," she said softly but firmly. Another gasp rippled through the crowd. Jessica's face turned pale. People started whispering louder now. Wait, he abandoned her when she was pregnant? She built all this by herself? Those kids are gorgeous. She looks like a queen. Daniel's parents, who had always been skeptical about the divorce, looked furious. His mother's lips pressed into a thin line as she looked from Sarah to Daniel, clearly putting the pieces together. Jessica looked around nervously, sensing the shift in the crowd's mood. What was supposed to be her perfect wedding was turning into a scandal. Daniel took a step toward Sarah, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "You should have told me." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "You should have stayed." Those 5 words hit him like a slap. Daniel opened his mouth to respond, but Sarah stepped back and knelt down to fix Adam's little bow tie. "Say hello to Daddy," she said gently. Adam looked up at Daniel with innocent curiosity. "Hi." he said softly, then grabbed his sister's hand. Daniel's throat went dry. For a moment, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: regret. Sarah's presence overshadowing the bride. Jessica cleared her throat loudly, trying to draw attention back to herself, but it was too late. Every guest's eyes were still on Sarah, on her children, on the Rolls-Royce waiting outside like a silent statement of her success. Sarah wasn't just attending the wedding. She was owning the moment. The musicians, unsure what to do, hesitated before starting the pre-ceremony music. The bride's perfect timing had been interrupted, the rhythm of the event completely thrown off. Sarah noticed, and for a split second, she felt a twinge of sympathy for Jessica. But it passed quickly. Jessica had been the reason she had spent so many nights crying into her pillow. This was a reality both Daniel and Jessica had created, and now they had to live with it. Sarah finally walked over to an empty seat near the front and gracefully sat down, placing the children beside her. She crossed her legs elegantly, her gown spilling over the chair like liquid silk. She could feel every pair of eyes still on her, and she didn't mind. She had been invited to this wedding to be a silent witness, to watch Daniel flaunt his new happiness. Instead, she had become the most powerful person in the room, and Daniel knew it. The garden fell silent. Even though the ceremony hadn't officially begun, the air felt charged, like a storm waiting to break. The guests who had been laughing and sipping champagne moments earlier now sat whispering, their gazes darting between Daniel, Jessica, and Sarah. Daniel's perfect wedding day was unraveling before his eyes. He had imagined this moment so differently. He had pictured Sarah sitting quietly in the back row, watching as he exchanged vows with Jessica, her face a portrait of heartbreak and humiliation. He had thought it would feel like victory, like closure. But looking at Sarah now, seated elegantly at the front with her 3 children, he didn't feel victorious at all. He felt small. His fiancée, Jessica, was growing visibly agitated. Her smile was gone, replaced with a tight expression of panic. She tugged on Daniel's sleeve. "Are you to do something?" she hissed under her breath. "She's stealing all the attention." Daniel clenched his jaw. This wasn't supposed to happen. Taking a deep breath, he walked toward Sarah, his polished shoes crunching on the gravel path. The murmurs among the guests grew louder. Everyone could sense something big was about to happen. When he reached her, he bent slightly, trying to keep his voice low and his expression calm. "Sarah," he said, "what are you doing here?" Sarah looked up at him, her face serene, her posture perfect. She didn't flinch. "I'm attending the wedding you invited me to, Daniel." His throat tightened. "You know that's not what I meant. Why did you bring them?" He gestured toward the children, who were now busy playing with the gold ribbon tied around a nearby chair. Sarah tilted her head, her smile polite but cutting. "Why wouldn't I bring them? They are your children, after all." Gasps echoed through the crowd. Several guests leaned closer, eager to hear every word. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. "Sarah, can we talk about this later? This is neither the time nor the place." "No," Sarah said, her voice quiet but strong enough for those nearest to hear. "This is exactly the time and place. You wanted me here so I could see your perfect new life. Well, now you can see mine." Jessica stood up abruptly, unable to stay silent any longer. "This is my wedding," she snapped. "You're causing a scene. Have some dignity and leave." Sarah turned her head slowly, locking eyes with Jessica. "Dignity?" she repeated softly. "You want to talk to me about dignity, Jessica?" Jessica faltered under Sarah's calm, almost icy tone. "You knew he was married when you started seeing him," Sarah continued, her voice carrying across the quiet garden. "You knew he had a wife at home who was trying to save their marriage. But you didn't care. You wanted what you wanted, and you took it. And now you expect me to sit quietly and watch you walk down the aisle as if none of it happened?" Jessica's face flushed crimson. She opened her mouth to reply, but no words came out. Daniel's mother suddenly stood from her chair, her expression unreadable. "Daniel," she said sharply, "is this true? These are your children?" Daniel swallowed hard, sweat forming on his forehead. "Yes," he admitted finally, his voice low. The crowd erupted into whispers. Unbelievable. He left her when she was pregnant? And she still managed to look like that? Daniel's father shook his head in disappointment, clearly furious. You abandoned your own family, he said, his voice booming. Inexcusable. Daniel felt trapped, the weight of every eye on him pressing down like a physical force. Sarah, he said again, softer this time, almost pleading. Please, let's not do this here. I didn't know. Sarah stood now, slowly and gracefully, her emerald gown cascading to the ground like a wave. She looked around to gather guests, then back at Daniel. You didn't know, she repeated, her voice steady. But you didn't care to know either. You walked away from me without a second thought. You didn't call, you didn't ask, you didn't wonder what happened to me. And yet, somehow I survived. I raised 3 incredible children without you. I built a business. I built a home. I built a life without you. Her words were like arrows, hitting their mark with precision. Daniel opened his mouth to respond, but Sarah raised her hand to stop him. You invited me here today to watch you flaunt your happiness, to show me that you had moved on and that I was nothing more than a mistake, she said, her voice ringing clear. But look at me, Daniel. Do I look like a mistake to you? There was a stunned silence. Sarah reached down and picked up Grace, who rested her little head on her mother's shoulder. These children are not mistakes, Sarah said softly. They are blessings. They are the reason I am stronger than I ever thought I could be. And today, I didn't come here to beg for anything. Not your love, not your money, not your approval. I came here to show you and everyone else that you didn't break me. Her words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Jessica's father, clearly embarrassed by the scene, walked up to his daughter and whispered something urgently. Jessica's lips trembled, her perfect wedding makeup threatening to run as tears welled up in her eyes. Daniel stood frozen, looking like a man who had just watched his entire carefully constructed image shatter in front of him. Sarah took a step closer to him. I forgive you, Daniel, she said quietly. Not for you, but for me, because holding on to the anger was heavy, and I don't carry that weight anymore. I am free. And with that, she turned and walked back to her seat. The crowd was stunned into silence. Even the musicians stopped playing. Daniel stood there, feeling more exposed than he ever had in his life. His wedding day, meant to be a celebration of love and success, had turned into a public reckoning. The officiant tried to regain control, clearing his throat and calling for the ceremony to resume. But the magic was gone. Guests were no longer smiling. Instead, they kept sneaking glances at Sarah and the children, whispering about how gracefully she had handled herself. Daniel's parents quietly approached Sarah and, to everyone's surprise, bent down to greet their grandchildren for the first time. Sarah smiled politely, allowing them to meet the children, but her walls were still up. She wasn't going to let them back into her life so easily. Jessica, meanwhile, looked on the verge of collapse. She had dreamed of this day being perfect, but now all she could feel was humiliation. Daniel tried to start the ceremony anyway, but it felt hollow. His vows stumbled on his tongue, his eyes constantly darting towards Sarah. For the first time, he wasn't sure if marrying Jessica was what he really wanted. Sarah didn't need to say anything else. Her presence was enough. She sat calmly, her children happily playing near her chair, as if they were completely unaware of the storm they had just walked into. Inside, Sarah felt a strange peace. She had faced Daniel, spoken her truth, and walked away with her head held high. This wasn't just about showing Daniel her success. It was about showing herself how far she had come. She had been invited to be humiliated. Instead, she had turned the spotlight around. And now, nothing Daniel said or did could take that away from her. For a moment, it felt as if time had stopped. Sarah sat with her children, her heart still pounding from the confrontation, but her breathing calm and measured. The garden was silent except for the faint chirping of birds, as though even nature had paused to take in what had just happened. The officiant cleared his throat again, attempting to continue. "Shall we proceed?" he asked gently, looking at Daniel for direction. But Daniel didn't answer. He stood frozen, staring at Sarah as if seeing her for the very first time. All the memories of their life together came rushing back. The late-night takeout dinners in their tiny apartment, The time she had stayed up sewing his shirts because they couldn't afford new ones. The way she had cheered him on when his business was just a dream. He suddenly felt the crushing weight of what he had thrown away. Jessica noticed his hesitation, her perfectly manicured hands tightening around the bouquet she held. "Daniel," she hissed, her voice shrill with panic. "Say something." Daniel blinked and turned to her, but for the first time there was no warmth in his eyes. "Give me a moment," he said, his voice low but firm. Jessica's mouth fell open. "A moment? You're leaving me standing here while you go talk to her." The guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This was no longer just wedding drama. This was a love story unraveling in real time. Daniel took a deep breath and walked back towards Sarah, his steps slower this time, heavy with guilt. Sarah looked up at him calmly. "Sarah," he said quietly, crouching slightly so that only she could hear, "I need to say this before you leave. I am sorry. For everything. For walking away. For not calling. For being a coward." Sarah's gaze was steady, but she said nothing. Daniel's throat tightened. "You deserved so much better than the way I treated you. I thought I was chasing happiness, but all I did was run from my responsibilities. Seeing you today, seeing the life you built, it made me realize just how wrong I was." Sarah's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. "You're right," she said softly. "You were wrong. But I'm not here to punish you, Daniel. I forgave you a long time ago. I had to, for my own peace." Daniel's eyes flickered with emotion. Do you think we could ever... Sarah stood before he could finish his sentence. She was no longer the timid woman he had once known. This was a new Sarah, one who had learned to stand tall even when the world tried to knock her down. "No, Daniel," she said gently but firmly. "We can't go back. And I don't want to. My life is here with my children, with the people who stood by me when you didn't. I came here today to show you that I survived, not to reopen old doors." Daniel nodded slowly, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I understand." Sarah looked past him to where Jessica stood, her expression a mixture of fury and humiliation. "Take care of her," Sarah said quietly. "If you really love her, then prove it. Be better than you were with me." Daniel swallowed hard. "I'll try," he said. Sarah turned away then, signaling to the chauffeur waiting by the Rolls-Royce at the edge of the garden. The driver opened the door, and the children skipped toward the car, giggling as if the tension of the moment hadn't touched them at all. Grace turned and waved at Daniel. "Bye, Daddy," she chirped innocently. The words hit him like a punch to the chest. He had missed so much. Birthdays, first steps, first words. And now here she was calling him Daddy for the first time in front of everyone. He smiled weakly and waved back, but tears stung his eyes. As Sarah prepared to leave, the guests began to murmur again. But this time, the tone was different. "She's incredible. Did you see how gracefully she handled that? She walked in here like a queen." Even Daniel's own parents approached Sarah once more before she could get into the car. "Sarah," Daniel's mother said softly, her voice tinged with guilt, "we didn't know about the children. We should have reached out. We should have done better by you." Sarah's expression softened slightly. "It's in the past," she said, "but they deserve to know their grandparents, if you're willing to be in their lives." Daniel's mother nodded eagerly, tears glistening in her eyes. "We like that very much." Sarah gave a small nod before stepping into the Rolls-Royce. The car door shut with a soft click that felt strangely final, like the closing of a chapter. As the car rolled away, Daniel stood frozen, watching until it disappeared down the driveway. Jessica stormed over to him, her face pale with rage. "What was that?" she demanded. "You humiliated me in front of everyone. You let her take over our wedding." Daniel turned to her, his face expressionless. "Jessica, maybe this isn't the right time to get married." Jessica's eyes widened. "What? You can't be serious." But Daniel wasn't joking. "I need to think. About everything. About the man I want to be." He walked away before she could stop him, leaving her standing there in shock, bouquet wilting in her hands. Inside the Rolls-Royce, Sarah exhaled deeply, a weight finally lifting off her chest. "You okay, Mommy?" Liam asked from the seat beside her. Sarah smiled and kissed the top of his head. I'm more than okay, sweetheart. I'm free. As the car glided down the road, Sarah looked out the window at the bright afternoon sky. She had faced a man who had once broken her heart, not with anger or bitterness, but with strength and dignity. She had shown him that she had built a life that didn't revolve around him. And most importantly, she had given her children the gift of truth. They would grow up knowing who their father was, and they would also know who their mother had become. A woman who refused to stay broken, a woman who turned pain into power. Back at the wedding venue, the guests quietly began to leave, whispering about the day's events. The flowers still bloomed, the music still played, but the joy had drained from the celebration. Jessica stood alone, humiliated, wondering if her perfect life was slipping through her fingers. Daniel sat in the empty garden, staring at the chair where Sarah had been sitting just minutes earlier. For the first time in years, he felt the full weight of his choices. He didn't know what the future held for him, but one thing was certain. Sarah had walked away the winner today, and as her Rolls-Royce disappeared down the road, leaving behind a cloud of dust and stunned silence, Daniel realized that the woman he had once underestimated had just taught him the most powerful lesson of his life. Never, ever try to disgrace someone who has already risen from the ashes. Sarah's story isn't just about revenge. It's about strength, growth, and self-respect. She walked into that wedding not as the abandoned wife Daniel thought she still was, but as the powerful woman she had become. And that's the kind of ending that leaves viewers with goosebumps and a smile.